Russian video games are among some of the most unique experiences I've had with this entire medium. The country is home to one of the most important and unanimously agreed upon perfect video games in Tetris, alongside some other big hits, but like every country, some of the gems require a little digging. I love the games I want to talk about today so much because these ones have so little interest in being anything other than what they are. Escape from Tarkov and Know by Heart are niche works, but they're also some of the most mechanically satisfying, fun, and soulful games I've ever played. I'm gonna start off by immediately recommending Know by Heart, even though it's the last game I'm gonna talk about. This is the least well-known game out of these two, with a whopping 2 YouTube reviews to its name, but as a story-focused walking simulator, I think it's easily the most accessible one. It's also had a profound emotional effect on me. I love this game so much, and I feel bad for buying it when it was on sale. It's cheap, it's short, and I think you'll really like it. If you haven't played Escape from Tarkov, I'm sure you've at least heard of it. It's an extraction shooter. Its core gameplay loop consists of you dropping into a map, looting, and getting out before you're killed by AI-controlled enemies or other players. It's been in the news recently because the developers, Battlestate Games, are just getting hilariously greedy. This game has been in beta for just over 7 years now, but they've been consistently raising prices and charging for things that maybe early adopters should probably be getting for just being early adopters. I don't really want to talk about whether these things are worth the price or not. I want to talk about why me buying these things, like the good little bootlicker I am, significantly improved my experience. I didn't really start enjoying this game until I bought the PvE expansion, which removes enemy players and makes this version of Tarkov a purely cooperative experience instead of a competitive one.
What is Alex Scav's name?
Just to be clear, this is not an expansion like it's labeled. It's a couple lines of code rearranged and sold for an extra $20. Content-wise, this is a completely identical copy of the game with the same quests, inventory systems, maps, guns, everything. What this expansion does do, though, is significantly lower the skill ceiling by getting rid of overpowered and sometimes cheating enemies that just keep ruining the fun. And by removing wipes, it probably improves progression in the long term and makes returning to the game after a long time way less annoying. You don't have to redo terrible fetch quests, and you don't have to say goodbye to your really sick guns every few months. PvE is a much more accessible version of this experience, which is funny because I know I said that games like this don't really have much interest in being anything other than themselves, and that kind of limits their reach, but this is still the same unforgiving Tarkov. Just because there aren't any real people on the other side of the screen doesn't mean that an AI scav won't still blow you away. Now there's just a smaller chance of an enemy PMC taking your head off without you even seeing him. Tarkov is a learning experience unlike any other, with what at first feels like so many nonsensical mechanics and menus slowly coming together into what to me feels super thought out and not nearly as bad as it could be. Tarkov's inventory system is pure utility. There is so little style and fun to be had here that it actually wraps around and kind of becomes fun to navigate. I'm a slut for games with inventory management, and there's something really satisfying about creating a bottomless pit of backpacks in order to make enough room for another gun. Actually playing a match is just as much of a learning experience as it is preparing for it. Best case scenario, you have a friend or a group of friends like I did that know the game and are willing to teach you how it works. Raw dogging Tarkov with no help is probably the worst thing you can do if your goal is to actually have fun with it. You're dropped in the middle of any given area you choose with no map, no idea where you should be going, and you're usually surrounded by the sounds of gunfire. One of my favorite parts about this game has been learning the maps, and you do have to genuinely learn them. Once you do, they start to feel a lot smaller, but at first, it's really easy to get lost and wonder how anybody finds their way around. But Tarkov's maps have very cleverly designed landmarks in between stretches of land that make you appreciate the level design as you become more familiar with it. A good sense of direction always helps, but I usually always pull up a community-made map on my second monitor to help me get around places I'm not used to, and it makes learning these areas feel much more fun and organic. Gunfights are frantic and tense in a way that no other first-person shooter is, and I mean that with zero exaggeration. Tarkov's dedication to being as realistic as it possibly can creates an unreplicable feeling of fear and adrenaline. I wouldn't call the gunplay good in the same way it is in something like Call of Duty or Apex. Like I said about the inventory, it's so grounded in its utility, you'll only really find satisfaction in it after you've spent the time learning it. My biggest criticism of Tarkov is that the guns lack a certain punch, but everything about the gun you're using can affect that feel in some way. Every single thing about your gun is customizable, and it translates to certain advantages and disadvantages in a fight. This applies to quite literally every part of your gear, and if you get shot, your body too. Certain injuries require certain healing items, and some of those healing items, like surgery kits, can't be bought, so there's even more of an incentive to play carefully, because if you lose a leg, not having the right items to fix it means it's gonna be a long walk to the extraction point, or even more likely, you'll bleed out before you even get close. There are so many variations of every healing item and piece of gear, and they can all be so functionally different that I will never come even close to knowing half of what it all means. But there's always someone who will, and I think that's really cool. Tarkov forces you to become a nerd about every single facet of its gameplay, and the reward is that knowledge. And that's why I fucking love this game. There is no game that rewards player improvement and dedication quite like this one. I think it's a really hard one to recommend though. The worst part about this game is that you essentially have to be grandfathered in. Access to PvE is minimum $70 US. Unless your friends are rich and also psychotic, I think it could be hard to convince 3 or 4 of them to jump in and learn the game with you. You can be that first generation Tarkov player if you want. There are plenty of videos on YouTube and a strong community that give you the tools to learn, but again, Tarkov is prohibitively difficult. I don't even like playing by myself that much.
Yeah, we killed the
Above you!
No, that's me, dumbass. We killed the player. Above me! There's a goddamn wall!
Fire game though. No by Heart is a walking sim / adventure game released in early 2022 by Icebig Lodge, a studio most well known for their Pathologic series. I've become fascinated by this particular group because even though they've put out 7 games, so far I've only played 2 and I'm obsessed with both of them. Pathologic 2 and No by Heart aren't genre defining in their gameplay by any means, but I think both of them have some of the most memorable everything else I've ever seen in my life. Their stories, art direction, and music are all great and unique, but it's the characters and their respective designs that have stuck with me the most. It's been a long time since I've played Pathologic 2, but I remember Oyun. I remember Vlad, and I remember the Executors, and that's not just because they look memorable, which they absolutely do, it's because they were interesting. I remember what it was like to talk to these people. No by Heart's characters are just as well designed and they feel even more real. The angular, low-poly art style is obviously a cost-saving measure, but there's detail where it's needed and undeniable beauty where you least expect it. The characters' 3D models are faceless, but their portraits tell me everything I need to know about them. The 2D art in the portraits and in other parts of the game are these cubic and slightly abstract pieces that lack a lot of that finer detail, which is thematically resonant in a game about clinging onto old memories before they eventually slip away. Misha is an average guy living in a small, post-Soviet town working a boring job at a train station. His childhood friends, who have since moved away, find themselves together again after they all return at the same time. But the town's struck with this weird disease that starts slowly affecting everyone's memories, and they soon start to forget each other. The game uses this premise to essentially convey a message to whoever might be listening, and to whoever it can apply to. It might be time to move on. No by Heart's gameplay is made up mostly of wandering this small, desolate Russian town and listening to Misha and his friends reminisce about the time they spent together as kids. You'll walk through memory bubbles and put photos back together as you listen to them put the pieces back together themselves. Once shit hits the fan, this gameplay is recontextualized. What once were simple, fun little memories becomes this struggle to hold on to them. A struggle to keep these pieces together, to keep the people once close to you from forgetting about you entirely. The premise of this game is similar to Pathologic, and I think that's on purpose. But Misha isn't a doctor. Misha didn't move away to pursue anything, and he didn't come back to figure out how to create a cure. He's stuck here. Everyone's stuck here, trying to fight an unstoppable disease by holding onto their memories in any way they can. It's an unbelievably bleak situation, but that's kind of why I love this game as much as I do. In Icepick Lodge's own words, this is a game about accepting loss. Know by Heart is a story where this shit just happens, and there's nothing you can do about it. There is no twist, no climactic save. They just go for it, and you have to watch it happen. And it's fucking heartbreaking. I might be talking too much about a game I want you to play, but the real spoilers are in the interactions between the people of the town and getting attached to them, which I did. The writing is excellent and the voice acting is equally so. I love Asya, Tioma, Genghis, and Almaz, but most importantly, I understand Misha. There are 2 endings to this game, and in finishing it again for this video, I picked the same ending because I can't stand the thought of watching Misha make the choice to stay when there's so much left for him to be. Up until this point, the only thing he is are his memories. It's the only way he can connect to the people around him. He doesn't want a future, he's never even thought about it. Maybe he can't even if he wanted to. Maybe I keep choosing for him to leave because that's what feels right for the story. Maybe it's because he's a wonderful character that deserved a second chance. Maybe it's because he's a great mix of an actual character and a self-insert, and I saw myself in him while he was going through the struggle of being too scared to take that first step to leave his town and pursue all the things he wanted to do forever. But somehow he never took that leap and ended up working shit job after shit job while his friends moved to college and got apartments and had fun. And maybe he went and visited them every once in a while, but I never had that life and I always wanted it, but I would never be able to have those experiences like they did. Even though I did end up getting that chance, I quickly moved back home, and ever since then I've moved out and done all the things I've wanted to, but the people in my life, even the ones younger than me, always seem to be a step ahead, and I can never catch up. And even though I'm happy, I'll never have a dream to pursue, but the more I think and the more I write, I realize
Первый класс. Мне на даче сорвали огромный букет георгин. Мне купили пенал, тетрадь. Я умею читать, а еще умножать на 1. Мне поставили 5. Я счастливый, сбегаю с продленки играть во дворе. У меня 8 соток, и все-таки с вот таким дзотом я снова пасую в игре. У соседа по парте дракон в тамагочи, он снова его воскресил. Дракон хочет есть, хочет спать. Дракону опять не хватает игрушечных сил. Повисим на руках. Тот, кто первый сорвется, слабак, кто последний атлет. Мне уже 10 лет. Я сцепился в турник, словно в стяг, жал кулак и сорвутся.